Okay, so just to begin, I just wanted to say, normally, like, before I, like, read a poem, like, I'll, like, apologize for it, like, because it's too sad or doesn't have a good ending, but after, like, watching everybody perform tonight and be so vulnerable with everyone, I don't feel the need to apologize. So I wrote this poem right before I moved here for college, and it's one of the first poems I've written that's really blunt and like actually like it's not, because I like to write in metaphors so I cover up what I really mean, but this time I actually wanted to be blunt about my life. And once I moved here, I was writing a queer piece for our class, and I realized there was so much more that I still was holding back, so I added more. Yeah, so I'm going to be vulnerable with you guys, and thank you everyone for just being vulnerable up here, and thank you everyone for just, Okay, it's called Pretty Things. I always loved pretty things, like my sister's hair and my mother's makeup, or my dad's silver rings he always wore, each day bringing about new faces and exciting adventures, sitting at my desk at 8 in the morning, writing my first poem about rainbows, because I thought they were pretty, and I liked the color. But I wasn't quite sure what rainbows meant, because they held many different meanings, and I would smile because I liked to, and it was a thing to do when you were happy. I continued loving appealing things, like my sister's voice when she sang, and my mother's laugh when she found something amusing, or my dad's efforts to make me just like him, each day bringing new situations and different events, sitting on my bed at 3 in the afternoon, writing another poem about a friend, because I thought he was perfect, and I liked his smile, but I wasn't quite sure how I felt, because I had many different feelings, and I would sigh because I had to, and it was a thing to do when you weren't sure of something. I started to question these pretty things, like my sister's intolerance and my mother's lies, or my dad's constant control over everything I did, each day giving me a new sermon or an attacking lecture, falling to my knees in the middle of the night, praying fervently to God, because I wanted to be normal, and I wanted my father to love me, but I wasn't sure what else to do, because nothing was working, and I remained silent, because I wasn't allowed to speak, and it was a thing to do when you were afraid. I started to hate those once beautiful things, like my sister's silence and my mother's obedience and my dad's attempts to fix me, sending me to church camps and retreats and forcing me to read books on renewing my mind, sitting in the church auditorium on Sunday mornings painting fake progress on my face because I wanted to fit in and I wanted God to accept me, but I didn't know how long I would last because I was dying inside, and I thought about death because it seemed easier, and those were the thoughts to have when you hated your life. I started to love forbidden things, and I stopped talking to my sister, and my mother would cry a lot, and my father came home one night and told us he was leaving, and the next morning he was gone, each day bringing more confusion and endless doubts, sitting on my bedroom floor at 7 in the evening, writing once again, but this time about someone I loved, because I couldn't have him, and I liked everything about him, but I knew how I felt, because it was the first time I had felt this feeling, and I would pray, because I wanted him so badly, and it was a thing to do when you were yearning for something. I began to hate myself for wanting these things, and I stopped going to church, and I didn't eat for weeks, and I told my best friend that I was in love with him, each word further disgusting him and destroying our once beautiful friendship, asking him one night to forgive me, because I ruined everything, and I just wanted him to be happy, but I could never make him happy, because I was a mess, a mistake, gay. And I would cry, because he was the first person I had ever truly loved, and it was a thing to do when your heart was broken. I started accepting these strange things, and I told my sister, and I told my mother, and I tried to tell my father, but he said absolutely nothing and looked away, because as a pastor, having a gay son was unacceptable. I went home and wrote another poem, because I wanted to feel better, and it was my escape. But I never felt better, because I was always sad, and I sat in silence, because I was apathetic, and it was a thing to do when you didn't feel anything. I fell in love with dangerous things, and I started pretending for my sister and lying to my mother and forgetting that my father ever existed, each day bringing more darkness and excruciating pain, sitting at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. writing about blood, because I had cuts all along my arm, and I thought they were pretty, and I liked the color, and I knew exactly what they meant, because they had many different meanings. And I smiled, because I was hurting, and it was a thing to do when you didn't know how to be happy.